Welcome to the Smart CEO Smart Chat. I am Kyra Hardwick, and I am thrilled to be here with you. Thanks for tuning in. We hope that this episode will be an incredible influence on the way that you do the work that you do every day. So whether you're a smart CEO, working from home, working from the office, simply navigating your life and family, whatever it is, today's the day you made a great decision to tune into our podcast and get this smart talk. So let's dig in.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the SmartCEO Podcast. I am your host, Alina Conley, and I am the program manager for the SmartCEO Capacity Builder Accelerator. And I am also the senior director of Coaching and People Development Division at the Kyra Company. And today I am joined by one of our latest cohort members, Tiffany McRae. She is the founder and CEO of McRae Specialty Services. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. How are you?
I am doing great. So let's just jump right into it. I would love to know, how did you get started in entrepreneurship? How did you decide that this was going to be something that you wanted to take as far as a path? Because we know that it's very different than most traditional 9 to 5. So how did you get that entrepreneurial itch, as we like to call it?
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty easy question for me, just because I've worked in corporate America for many years, helping other businesses be successful. And throughout my career, I kept having this inkling in the back of my mind of I could be doing this for myself. Everything that I'm teaching the CEOs and CFOs, I could be applying to a business for myself and thinking about my family and wanting to leave a legacy for them and their children and their grandchildren. I knew that I could not do that as a part of corporate environment, right? Like there's a cap in a corporate environment, but there's no cap on your own business. And so really that kind of spark pushed me to start the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us more about your business. What services do you all offer?
Sure. We are a security guard company offering unarmed and armed security as well as concierge services here in the state of Arizona and fastly expanding throughout the United States and hopefully globally at some point in the future.
And so were you already working in this lane on the corporate side, or is this something that you saw a need for and you created it? How did you decide to get in this particular business lane?
So I think for us, we always had an idea that we would start a business, right? But really thinking about need versus want,
Mhm.
right? And so understanding that businesses really thrive in both areas, but we wanted to target what people actually need. We know that security services is a huge need right now because corporations, organizations want to feel safe. And obviously, they can't hire 24-hour a day, 7-day a week police officers because the police have something else that they need to do. So then we have the opportunity to fill in that gap. And so if you go into any bank, any large corporate structure, the first face that you see is typically the security guards sitting at the front desk or again walking around the bank to make sure everybody feels safe and that there's that presence there. And so really that is how we got down this path. Additionally, we wanted to provide some impact in the community. And so being able to provide jobs to folks with their security license within the community and be able to provide a diverse workforce really prompted us to start this business.
Okay. Now I hear you saying we. Are you in business with a team or do you have a co-founder?
So I am the CEO and president. We're a minority woman-owned business, but I have a director of operations who really talks about and works the operations portion of the business. I am more the strategic side of the business and doing interviews and really thinking about how we scale business, how we grow from a business perspective. And he actually runs all the operations. So today we have over 40 employees. He makes sure that the contracts that we have today are functioning and we have enough staff there, and we're meeting the needs of our clients.
Mm-hmm. So I love that you said that you took the approach of need versus want, because I know for me, that's something that I always personally struggle with in business because I'm such a emotion-driven business owner. I like to create businesses based off of what feels good, which aligns with my personality type, and it's worked out. But when I'm working with clients, especially first-time business owners, I do think the approach of servicing based off demand. And so what was your market research? Excuse me, I'm trying to figure out the word, but what was the way in which you went about determining that this actual niche of security had the demand? And then I'm curious to know, what were some of the other things out there that kind of stood out in terms of a need in the community?
So I think for us, we're watching the news, right? And you see it everywhere, right? There's this fear base that you pick up when you watch the news, gun violence, and you see a lot more homelessness and transient population moving into the area. And so you automatically get a sense that there is a need for this service. And then you go out and do your research on the internet and you find out this is a $22 billion industry. 100% there is a need out there for it. And really that was really what we saw. Again, we know that police departments can't be everywhere at all times. And so that was the other piece that we recognized, that we had the ability to step into the gap in that area and, and do the most good. And then from a community perspective, do not have college degrees. Sometimes they don't have high school diplomas. However, there's a lot of people who can go and get a security license. And so they've got the training, they've got the experience, they have the license, which we require as a business. And so being able to look at that population and see that need, we saw that we were able to not only provide a service to our clients and individuals that are looking for a security presence, again, both armed and unarmed. We also saw a need for a workforce that needed employment. And understanding those two needs, we just felt that it was a really good opportunity.
Okay. So you see the opportunity, you fill in the gap. So how did you go about getting the business off the ground? What was the next step once you guys decided what business you were going to go into?
Yep. So I think the next steps for us were really to understand, how do we go and get licensed as an agency? And so here in the state of Arizona, you have to go through the Department of Public Services or Public Safety, DPS, and you have to get licensed as an agency. And then once you're licensed as an agency, we needed to look into, okay, what's the cost of doing business, right? And so what do uniforms look like? What is the industry standard for wages? What kind of insurance do we need? What kind of liability do we have to be able to have in order to have armed guards? And so we just really took a well-rounded approach of trying to set things up and set processes up, right? Like I hear Kyra always say, people, processes, profit. And so we really tried to do a really thorough job of setting up the processes and setting up the budgets in order to be successful from the beginning. And then we just hit the ground running. So we started looking at organizations that we thought fulfilled the need, and we just went and started talking to people. And you realize
you say you went to start talking to people. Was that knocking on doors? Was that sending emails?
Literally,
Like, what did it look
literally hitting the pavement?
Okay.
Some emails were sent, but here's the good thing that came out of that. So we started small, and we did such a great job in providing the service, and customer service is always the biggest part of security guard services, right? It's not just the presence, it's about how you treat the clients customers. And so we did such a great job that word of mouth started to travel. And so we started getting more offers from more clients based on that word of mouth. And like I said, I come from a corporate environment. And for me, the most important part of the business is setting it up and having a really great foundation that we can continue to build on. And so now we're in a place where we can go after the big government contracts. We can go after the city contracts. We can look at expanding because we have a model that works.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I heard you mention earlier was you found the demand, but you also saw the need in the workforce, right? And then you talked about the need to fill in the workforce, not just with your typical college degree people, but people who really also are the majority. Why was that important to you?
Because I feel like we want to be able to provide people with a living wage. We want to be able to give people gainful employment so that they feel that they're making a contribution to the world in the way that most people want to feel. And so that piece was really important to us in terms of helping to fulfill the mission of the organization. We want to be.
What would you say is the mission?
The mission of our organization is really to provide safety for our clients and to help them feel a presence with our security services, to protect their people, their business, their assets, and provide exceptional customer service, not just good customer service, but exceptional. That is important. We teach our employees that because we want the client to feel that. The saying that I say all the time is Maya Angelou: people forget what you do, they forget what you say, but they really remember how you make them feel. And so that is really, truly important to this business.
Where do you think that comes from? Is that something in how you were raised? Do you have an affinity for the community? I guess what I'm trying to pull out of you in this moment is just trying to pinpoint. For many of us, when we start these businesses, it is much deeper than just demand and product, right? It goes back to our mission, our purpose as individuals, but also in how we want to show up amongst the collective for our communities. And so where do you think, even in that quote that you speak of, like where does that come from in how you were raised or your own personal values?
So my father was a Chicago police officer. And so I watched him in public service. I watched him sacrifice a lot of his time to make sure our community was safe. And his impact was so great that not only was he the police, but my stepbrother is a police officer in Chicago. My first cousin is Secret Service. And I have another cousin that is also Secret Service and DEA. So it runs very heavy in my bloodline. I did not necessarily want to be a police officer, but I went and got my master's degree in public service management. Being a part of the community and understanding like how greatly we individually impact the community is just something that has been very important to me in my career. For a while, I actually worked for the public health department here in Arizona and was running the vaccine program. So I have worked in nonprofit, I have worked in public service, I have worked in corporate, and it is always very important to me, to my family, that we help impact the community in a positive way.
I never knew that about you, but it all makes sense. It all makes sense now. It all makes sense now. I actually just came back from Chicago yesterday. I'm assuming you're from there originally?
I am born and raised on the south side of Chicago.
Our last cohort was in Chicago. So that's why we have so many Chicagoans in this cohort as well.
Got it.
So that makes sense as to why you have that entrepreneurial Chicago hustle in you.
Yes.
When I interviewed our last cohort, it was just something about every single one of them that I was like, there is something about Chicago natives that just make y'all different. And it was very apparent in every interview. And now that I know that you're from there, it all makes sense. Like there's something there. My intuition is telling me something. Okay, so that really makes sense. And I think that's really important because when we were doing, for those of you all that are listening, during our cohort, we have a segment in the beginning of every session where we dedicate it to mindfulness and groundedness. But the purpose is to give our CEOs the opportunity to come into the space, but recognize themselves first. And so while we are here to grow thriving businesses, we think it's equally important to have flourishing CEOs and founders. And so one of the things that we did during one of our mindfulness segments was we did a live demonstration of helping someone find their ikigai, which is basically a Japanese practice of essentially finding your purpose or your calling so that you're doing something in the world that aligns with your purpose, but also what the world needs and what you could get paid for. And as I'm talking to Tiffany today, I think it's very apparent that on the surface, it seems, oh, she's just creating a company that is based off of the demand and the need. But if you go deeper and you pull back the layers, it still very much aligns with personal principles in terms of the things that she believes, that she values, how she wants to serve the community, what she saw growing up in terms of sacrifice from her father. And I think that when we have companies that align with those deeper whys, it makes it that much easier for us to really push through when things get challenging in the businesses.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the challenges that you feel like maybe you didn't see coming or maybe have took the wind out of you when you were trying to get this thing off the ground? Because we know that this entrepreneurship journey is not always just on the up and up.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest, it's a positive challenge, but still a challenge is the fact that we grew so fast in a 2-year time frame, right? Like you have to quickly get ramped up and quickly hire and quickly get processes and procedures in place so that you can function appropriately, quickly train folks. And so I think for us, that is the journey that we're on right now. Thank goodness we have really been able to scale and get people where we need them to be, and the business is running great. But now it's time for us to take a step back and close the gaps that we may have missed because we had to move and ramp up so quickly. So that is the process that we're going through now. And thank you so much for Smart CEO Accelerator, right? Because you all are really making me think through, okay, we really need to take a look at this cybersecurity protocols. And so different things like that. So for me, I think that is probably the biggest challenge right now because I know where we are right now. We're going to soar. We're going to be a very large organization. I already see it, right? Like I see it off in the distance in the very close future. And so I want to be prepared for that. I don't want to get into conversations with large contracting officers or large corporate organizations and they ask us to do something and we're not prepared for that. And so that's where we are today, is making sure that we are closing those gaps so that we can already be prepared for what we know is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you use that as an example because that is so common, especially amongst our businesses, because we do support our own. And a lot of times we find something that's really going to pop. It grows very fast. We saw a lot of this happen during COVID where people took off, whether it was an internet-based business or something that they received funding for being minority business. And then either they didn't know what to do with the funding and it was misappropriated, or they just didn't know how to grow. And now we're starting to see doors close because people didn't know how to properly scale. They didn't have things in place. And when you think about your experience with Smart CEO now, one of the things you've already talked about is our 3 Ps, the model around people, process, and profitability. We also have pillars like we focus on collaboration, ability, supply chain readiness. what were some of the things that you feel like you really grasped onto in terms of what you want to bring into your business, say in the next 6 months?
Really overall capacity planning. The exercise that you all have us going through now around capacity planning is actually making me take a step back and really evaluate all the different aspects of the business, right? From the finances to technology to operations to succession planning, again, growth, short-term and long-term growth. So I feel like these are all topics that we've talked about during the course of the 6 weeks. At some point, we want to look at real estate and how do we acquire and how do we look at land acquisitions, right? And so it was really timely to have the speakers that you had on come in and talk about that, because there's so many things and so many aspects that I had no idea about. So really from the beginning of this program all the way through where we are today has brought me along and leveled me up in a way for each topic. So again, thank you all so much. I just love what you're doing, and you're really helping me to think about my business in a very different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you think about some of the relationships that you think you could potentially gain from this, right? Because I think that maybe even in the first session, I think it was with John Whaley, he talked about how strategically one of the ways that we can grow opportunities is being in circles where people are saying, hey, my business needs security. And then someone just happens to be in the conversation and they're like, oh, I have a girl, Tiffany, right, over in Arizona. She can hook you up. So to me, that was something that always stood out in my mind, because we always hear this thing of your network is your net worth. But I really didn't look at it as the majority of my opportunities will come from being adjacent to the businesses that need me, right? So I guess his example was, if you're in HR, don't necessarily go to an HR seminar, go to a private equity seminar, because they're going to be talking to all of these startups that need HR support, and you're the HR
Right.
from, right?
Yep.
When you hear stuff like that, how do you feel like going forward, you're going to navigate relationships?
Funny, in my career, I've actually been a relationship management director.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So this is your thing.
So, yeah. So, building relationships is key to anything that you do, right? Because you have to get people to trust you and believe in what you're saying and feel comfortable with you. And so I feel like through Smart CEO, especially Mighty Networks, there is a huge opportunity to do some of that networking and building some of that relationships that you're talking about, because there's so many different businesses within Mighty Networks and so many folks that have been through the cohorts and speakers. And I feel like there's really an opportunity to tap into that network. But again, to your point, just being a part of the local chamber of commerce. There's one in Arizona, there's multiple in Arizona. We're currently a part of Greater Phoenix. There's the Black Chamber of Commerce. Getting into some of those spaces with other business owners, I think, is also a great way to build those relationships, as well as also going to some of those seminars and conferences that are not specific to security. Because the other part of that is I'm always also looking to grow our workforce. And so being able to network in that way too and build relationships so that if something becomes available, I know who I can tap into from that aspect as well. Yeah, relationships, they're my jam.
I love that. So before I let you go, let's say someone is listening to this and they're considering applying for our next cohort. What would be some advice that you would give them?
Listen, take copious notes. If you are selected to be a part of the Smart CEO program, build your network, build the relationships with the folks who are saying to you during the sessions, call me, email me, set up some time with me. Because as much as we would like to think that we know everything there is to know about everything, we don't. And so tapping into someone else's knowledge and skill set, I think is really important in terms of being able to grow your business and growing your own space. So listen, be aware, and apply what you learn to your own business. So that's the advice that I would give.
I love that. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And thank you guys for tuning in to yet another episode of the SmartCEO Podcast. We look forward to seeing you all in our Mighty Network community where we share tips, business advice. You have the opportunity to network with people like Tiffany and other small business owners, as well as our strategic partners. And so if you're not a part of the community, we encourage you to get a subscription and a membership today. And we look forward to seeing you on the other side. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Smart Chat. Smart CEOs, you are on your way. We hope this episode has been fantastic for you. We are excited that you were here. So here's the deal. Follow us on all of our social media, look up the Kyra Company, and join us on all of our private platforms. We invite you to join our private Facebook group at the Smart CEOs. Jump in, join the conversation, and learn more about what we can do every day to grow our business and grow our community. Thanks so much for joining us. We're excited that you were here. Once again, I'm Kyra Hardwick, and you know it. I was thrilled to bring the Smart Chat to you. Take care. Talk to you soon.